All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 2025 meeting for the City of Troy Zoning Board of Appeals. We will call the meeting to order, and our first order of business tonight will be our roll call. So, Mr. Evans, when you're prepared to call the roll.
Mr. Fox.
Here.
Mr. Forster.
Here.
Mr. McCauley.
Here.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Here.
Ms. Chambers.
Here.
Mr. Kenkre.
Here.
Mr. Bossenbrook.
Here. Okay, we'll move on to item number 2, which is the reading of our statement of procedure for how we conduct our hearings. And I'll turn to my immediate left, Mr. Eisenbacher, if you could read that statement of procedure for us.
Okay. Zoning Board of Appeals. The Zoning Board of Appeals is a group of 7 of your neighbors appointed by the Troy City Council to decide on requests for variances and other matters that are brought before them. A variance is a relaxation of the literal provisions of the zoning ordinance. Applicants must indicate a hardship or practical difficulty with the land that would warrant the granting of the variance. Procedure. The board will hear the items in the order that they appear on the approved agenda. When an item is called, the chairperson will verify that the applicant is present, then the city administration will summarize the facts of the case. If there is less than a full board, 7 members, present at a meeting, an applicant may request a postponement so his or her request can be heard by a full board. If there is no request for a postponement, the applicant will then be given an opportunity to address the board to explain the justification for the action requested. After the applicant makes their presentation and answers any question that the board may have, the chairperson will open the public hearing. Any person wishing to speak on the request should raise their hand and, when recognized by the chairperson, come up to the podium. The speaker should identify themselves with name and address, indicate their relationship to the property in question, for example, next door neighbor, live behind the property, etc., and state whether they are in favor of or against the variance request and give reasons for their opinion. Comments must be directed through the chairperson. Comments should be kept as brief as possible and closely pertain to the matter under consideration. Only one person will be recognized by the chairperson to speak at one time. At the conclusion of public comments, the chairperson will close the public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, no other public comment will be taken unless in response to a specific question by a member of the board. The board will then make a motion to approve, deny, or postpone the request. In order for the request to pass, a minimum of 4 votes are needed. If the request is not granted, the applicant has the right to appeal the board's decision to Oakland County Circuit Court.
All right, thank you, Mr. Eisenbacher. We will move on now to our approval of the meeting minutes from last month, April 15. Unless there's any discussion on the minutes as printed, can we get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Mr. Fox, seconded by Ms. Chambers. Unless there's any discussion, Mr. Evans, we are prepared to vote on the motion to approve the minutes.
Mr. Bossenbrook.
Yes.
Ms. Chambers.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Chambers.
Yes.
Mr. Kenkre.
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes.
Mr. McCauley.
Yes.
Mr. Fox.
Yes.
Mr. Forster.
Yes. All right, motion is approved, so meeting minutes have been approved. Moving on then to tonight's agenda as printed. Unless there's any discussion from members of the board, we will go ahead and finalize tonight's printed agenda. All right, it is done. All right, we'll move on to the 5th item. We have 2 items up for hearing tonight, both of which were originally noticed for hearing last month, but were subject to postponement, so we will hear both of those tonight. We will start with the application for 3991 Crooks and vacant properties south thereof. So Mr. Evans, whenever you're ready, if you could give us the opening presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as printed in the agenda, this is a variance request to allow the height of a proposed multi-unit attached residential development to be 33 feet height, where the zoning ordinance allows a 30-foot height maximum. Now, this is an aerial of the neighborhood. We have Waddles at the top and Crooks is the north-south street. And the development consists of a group of properties here outlined in red at the southwest corner. And the subject property is zoned neighborhood node I, that's our neighborhood node, that's with this color. And all the same colors are zoned, so all 4 corners are zoned neighborhood node. And then surrounding that, you've got primarily single-family residential zoning, which is in the yellow. Now, this is a close-up of the proposed development, and multifamily use with attached residential units. But the subject matter involves the height of the buildings, and this is a sample elevation they've provided. But the height of the buildings, this is a cross-section, these are all out of your agenda packet, but the height of the buildings computes to 33 feet, and the ordinance only allows a 30-foot height maximum. So in order to proceed with this plan, they're seeking the request to relief for the height on the proposed buildings. Now, this matter was last heard actually before the Planning Commission on February 11th this year, and because the applicant at that time knew and advised the Planning Commission that they were going to seek this variance, the Planning Commission discussed the item but took no action. And that's what the ordinance says. If they can't approve it because a variance is needed, it has to come here for whatever action this board takes. Then it returns to the Planning Commission for their action. So I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Evans. Any member of the board wish to be recognized for questions for city staff? Yeah, Mr. Fox.
There's a note from Mr. Savadant, the Community Development Director, about a discrepancy between the cross sections as to whether or not that third story is a full story or a half story. Do you mind elaborating on that, or is that something we should ask the applicant about?
Well, I think what he's saying is that, that just to note that those pages were not in front of the Planning Commission. And in his opinion, it's confusing. It seems to infer that the third level is a full story and not a half story. And I believe what he's trying to say there is that it is a half story, the third level.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions for city staff? Yeah, Mr. Eisenbacher.
Could you clarify what is meant in our zoning ordinance by a half story? How does that differ from a full story?
Let me get the definition in front of us here.
Okay.
All right, and I'm going to bring the zoning ordinance over to the big screen here so we can all look at it. So it has to do, well, an uppermost story lying under a sloping roof, the usable floor area at which a height of at least 4 feet above the floor does not exceed 2/3 of the floor area in the story directly below, and at the height above, at least 200 square feet of floor space is 7 feet 4 inches. Okay, so that's a half story. When the usable floor area of such a story at a height of 4 feet does exceed 2/3 of the floor area, it shall be counted as a full story. And here's a little diagram to show. So it has to do with the ratio and the heights of not only this, but what's below it and the percentage. I hope that makes some sense, but yeah, but simply put, I know that Director Sabanat was working closely with the applicant and was scrutinized very closely that that this satisfies the story requirement for that zoning district.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Evans, appreciate that. We will now invite the applicant up to the podium and/or their representative. And sirs, if you could just identify yourselves and your relationship to the property. Obviously, we have what you presented in your written application, but whatever other comments you'd like to make, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is David Donnellan. I'm an architect and a planner. I'm representing the client in this particular case because we as architects and designers provide that service to our client. My partner in architecture is with us, Paul Burton, and our civil engineer, John Hauser, PEA, is with us also. I have to apologize. Well, let me thank you first for postponing the event, because I had a very serious operation, and I'm down to just a couple of patches now. Makes a big difference. And the work we had to do, I apologize also. When you get past 80, things start falling apart. That's why I can't hear very well. And I even had to ask, because you guys are so soft to me. Even with my hearing aids, I need some help. So I appreciate it. If you talk directly to me, I can hear slowly, and I appreciate it very much. So we're here now to present the request for a variance of 3 feet, which of course is this little triangular area that you've seen in the paper, in the presentation that I gave you. I showed sections, drawings, where it's just this little area on the top of the roof that is being requested as a variance at 3 feet. John, did you want to say anything to start? Are you all right?
I'm good, yep. Just-
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. I have given you a lot of information, basically because there's been a lot of controversy over the neighborhood nodes, and especially this property. So we're struggling to meet all the requirements of the zoning ordinance and do a good project. I mean, the client is a resident of this city for over 50 years. He is actually the developer for Stonehaven, and he was also the developer for Woodland. So he knows good architecture and good projects, and he's trying to make this project as good as Stonehaven. To do that, we have to make the homes single-family attached, and I use the word homes. We're not talking about apartments. We're not talking about rentals. We're talking about people who are going to buy these homes and live here. This is important, and it's important to the neighbors too, because we have had 4 meetings with our neighbors, and we have shown them all the things we are trying to accomplish. And I think there's a letter in the back of the packet from them. And I'm hoping that the chairperson, the president of the association, will be here tonight to talk about this.
Yes, he's here.
Oh, he's here. Thank you, and then, I would like to just do a short summary of all that I've put on paper and make it easier on us. And the first thing I want to point out on page 1 of the information that I shared is the actual definition. And that definition is very important to the discussion. For the height, any building, and this is the caveat, this is the thing that created all the problem that's not in any other regulation for any use in any district in the community. A building or portion of a building. That's no longer Article 2, height, halfway between the gutter and the ridge. It's to the ridge. And that's the struggle we're having. And it's related to any parcel abutting a one-family residential zone parcel and shall not exceed 2.5 stories, 2.5 stories, and 30 feet. Well, again, I just briefly shared with you the land use plan asks that this piece of property be low intensity and low density. Low intensity, low density. Even though it's zoned neighborhood node, and you could have apartments, commercial, this developer has chosen to do one-family attached. Not a lot of apartments, not a lot of commercial, 38 homes on this 5.5 acres. And its location next to Stovenhaven and the quality of their homes is what's triggering everything that we've had to do for our client. The homes in Stonehaven are 3,600 square feet. Ours are about 3,000. Stonehaven homes to the ridge, now I know they don't have to use that definition, but to the ridge, it's 34 feet to 38 feet according to this definition. But it's only us that have to apply to that, adhere to that definition. Increased value and whatever we're trying to reach their value so we don't reduce the value of the neighborhood. There's a very important point in the zoning ordinance. It's Article 8, and it has to do with projects, when they get developed, should relate to the neighborhood they're in. And it is clear in reading the master plan update for this property, and every aspect of the master plan update does have a bearing on how the property can be used and how the building are designed to meet the intent of Article 8, site plan review. And I don't know if you can pull up page 2 on the screen that shows a quotation right out of the zoning ordinance, how the architecture should be consistent with the neighbors in the surrounding community. Okay? So with that, let me go right into practical difficulty. The first practical difficulty are related to the exceptional characteristics of the property. And in the Zoning Board of Appeals section of the zoning ordinance, it references width, area, things like smallness. It doesn't reference height, but if you understand, height is a characteristic of the property. When we look at 2.5 stories and 30 feet, you actually, even though you get permission for 2.5 stories, you can't build it 30 feet or less. So let me share with you a piece of some information on the graphic that you had shown for the definition for 2.5 stories that was shown up here. I've augmented it a little bit so that we can look at the dimensions that are associated with 2.5 stories. Of course, I don't have my own copy, but that's okay. I memorized it. So in the graphic, at the top of the page is right out of the zoning ordinance. I created a graphic similar to that definition for 2.5 stories, and proportionally, I put dimensions to it. And so typically, a house is 1.5 feet, 1 foot 6 inches out of the ground. 8 foot to the ceiling, a foot for the next floor system, 8 foot to the ceiling, and so on. And you get up to a height at 7 foot 6 inches for the half story. Structurally, architecturally, structurally, the framing member that holds the rafters together has to be at least 1/3 down from the peak, from the ridge. And so when you take all those, that dimension, 7'6" plus the floor system, 8'6", you're adding approximately 3 feet. Do I have it right? You're adding approximately 3 feet. And for this simple, smallest house, 24 feet by 24 feet, which is too small to put on this property, by the way, because the houses next door are 3,600 square feet, you still exceed 30 feet by 9 inches. When the houses get bigger, you can make adjustments for the framing, the roof framing. You can change the slope. This is a very steep slope. Stonehaven roofs have some steep slopes, but the main slope on the Stonehaven homes is 812 or 12.8. 12 horizontally, 8 vertically. And that's why they reach 34 feet. And ours, we went down to 8, 12, and we end up with a few other adjustments, we end up at 33 feet. So the practical difficulty is the ordinance has created a situation that can't be met. 2.5 stories. Oh yeah, I can't make it smaller because we just saw on this graphic that the roof is going to exceed 30 feet, whatever. It's in order to reach the square footage and the value of our neighbors, to allow the people who buy these homes architecturally, we need all 2.5 stories. We need that bonus room. We need that bedroom. We need that playroom. We need that loft area. And we want it by virtue of the neighbors' needs who are going to buy these homes. Okay? The next practical difficulty must relate to the premises for which the variance is sought, not some other location. Well, we just went over the fact that this is all related to this location. May I go on? Please. The third practical difficulty shall not be of a personal nature. Well, he's a developer. He's not doing this personally. He's trying to do it for the new buyers, the new residents who come to Troy and live, work, raise their children. That's what we're trying to accomplish. The next one is the fourth practical difficulty must not have been created by the current or previous owner. How do I answer that one? Because the developer is creating this, but it's not related to his interest, it's related to the structure itself. And that's what we always have to keep in mind. It relates to that. And the last one is very important. Because this is not rentals, we don't have a transient society. We have owners, and they're going to live here. They're going to be your neighbors. Your children are going to be in their schools. And the proposed variance will not be harmful or alter the essential character of the area in which the property is located. That's why we made these homes look very close to and as close to and emulate the homes in Stonehaven. They will not impair the adequate supply of light and air to the adjacent properties. 38 homes on 5.5 acres. I know that that's more than homes per acre in Stonehaven, but we couldn't do single family in a neighborhood node. It's not permitted, okay? You're going to ask that question, why is it not? It's very clear in the zoning ordinance under neighborhood node that single-family detached is not permitted in the node. So what is permitted? The primary function of the neighborhood node is mixed use, a combination of residential over commercial. Way down at the bottom of the spectrum is one family attached, okay? And that's what the developer chose to do, one family attached. Nor should that unreasonably increase the congestion in public streets. We had, I didn't make part of the presentation. We have a traffic study that shows that this will add less than 1% additional congestion to the intersection of Crooks and Waddles, okay? We have no problem with the fire apparatus. They have already approved it. And we are consistent with the value of the surrounding homes, and we will not impair public health, safety, comfort, morals, or welfare of the inhabitants of the city. We would appreciate it if you could grant a 3-foot variance for this little triangle on these homes so we can be comparable to our neighbors. Thank you. Did I cover it?
I think so.
Thank you. I just have to make sure.
All right, thank you. If you want to stay up here for a moment, we may
I would
have
appreciate that,
questions
yeah.
from members of the board. Any member of the board wish to have the floor to ask a question of the applicant? Mr. McCauley?
Excuse me, I'm not finding the square footage of each residential unit.
No, say it again.
What's the square footage of each residential unit that you're planning on building?
Our homes,
Yes,
about 3,000 square feet.
3,000 square feet, okay.
The homes in the neighborhood are 3,600.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
Other members of the board?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher?
Hello. This has come before us before, this similar request. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to see that before and review that outcome. And hopefully you're aware that there is one other development that did meet this 30-foot requirement.
And which development is that?
I can't remember the name. but I
Is it
know
a,
that
is it
they-
a one-family attached or is it an apartment complex?
One family attached.
Okay,
And they lowered the first level, so it was partially submerged.
I apologize. I cannot imagine anybody wanting to buy a home worth $900,000 and let it be 3 feet into the ground. I apologize. I almost had a
Well,
heart attack.
looking at the math on your sheet, if you go at grade, instead of being 1'6" above grade, so you got the 1'6" above grade,
Yes,
8-foot first floor, 1-foot spacer, 8-foot second floor, 1-foot spacer, and then they squished the roof compared to what you had done.
say it again. They squished the, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, I understand. They squished the roof. I don't know what's next door to them, but what's next door to us is what we emulated. And we want to do that. Emulate the neighbor, that's all. That's the difference. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Going back to one of your, the first item on your statement of practical difficulty, where you were talking about, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
Can you hear him?
Yeah, I think so. Go ahead.
Okay. If you can't hear me, let me know.
Oh, Yeah, I will.
Okay, the exceptional characteristic of the property,
Yes.
you said that it's the height is the exceptional characteristic of the property. Is that,
Correct.
Okay.
The height limit.
The
is
height limit.
acceptable. Just like narrowness is, if it's too narrow, that's an exceptional characteristic of the site.
right?
So in this case, height,
Let me ask my question. Okay, so, but isn't the height limitation a function of the zoning ordinance?
so is with an area.
Right, but that's,
Actually,
I guess it feels like the argument's a little circular. You're saying the height, the limitation, the exceptional characteristic is the height, but the height is what's capped by the zoning ordinance, right? It's not the property itself, it's the zoning ordinance that you're objecting to.
okay, I would like to approach it this way. Property has none of these characteristics in and of itself. Zoning regulations give character and dimension to property. So just like, for example, if I had a piece of property that was 97 feet wide, and I wanted to build a house on it, I took it into the planning department and the building department, I'm going to build it. They said, oh no, you can't do that. A 97-foot wide piece of property I can't build on? I don't understand. Oh, you're in R1B and your property needs to be 100 feet wide. Okay? I need a variance. I have to come here. I have to ask for it. That's very clear in the definition in A under practical difficulty. In our case, all zoning district classifications are permitted to use the definition in Article 2 for height, which is halfway between the gutter and the ridge. If we can do that, even in the node, if we are not next to a residential zoning classification. So this additional restriction is the practical difficulty related to our neighbor and us and trying to build a house that emulates that neighborhood. I think it is an exceptional characteristic, as is with area and whatever.
I think to add to that, another thing that David and I have spoke about is that 2.5 stories is allowed by zoning. And what he's trying to demonstrate is that you can't get 2.5 stories in the neighborhood node with the 30-foot limit at any point on the building.
Well, again, the one comment, can I change you can see as I change it and bring the ridge down, structurally, it's not good. Visually, it's not consistent with the neighborhood. And in order for us to achieve even 3,000 square feet close to the neighbors, all these dimensions and all these characteristics are constantly on our designer's mind as we design to try and figure out how to make it work. That's why we're here.
Okay. Any other questions for members of the board? All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. At this point, we will open up public comment. If there's anyone here who wishes to speak to this matter, please come to the podium. If you could identify yourself and address your comments to the application.
Sure. My name is Anand Sinha. Good evening. I'm the president of the Stonehaven Woods East subdivision. We are 42 houses south of Wattles and west of Crooks. So Pinnacle of Troy is an immediate neighbor to our subdivision. We have 42 houses and it was built in phases. We were told when we got in that what will be built will be the phase 4, and the houses will be identical to ours, or as an extension of our subdivision. So that's point number 1, that the assumption under which we bought the property, all our neighbors, was that there won't be anything different to what we currently have. Since then, there has been rezoning, and it was zoned as neighborhood node, which allows higher density, and technically speaking, it allows even apartment to be built, and does not allow, as David said, a single-family detached like ours. So we have met with Choice Group, and a lot of our neighbors have met with Choice Group. We've had internal meeting. What we want is to protect our property price. On an average, the CAGR has been less than 2% for whatever reason. We don't want to be impacted. So the best thing for us, if a single-family detached homes like ours cannot be built, then what Choice Group has presented, which is a single-family attached with the look and feel similar to ours. So that is the reason why we want to support the Choice Group in the proposed design and the aesthetics, which looks like ours. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McCauley, I think.
I have a question for Mr. Sinha.
Yes, sir.
Did I pronounce it right?
Say that again?
Did I pronounce your name right, Sinha?
Anand
Your
Sinha?
last name?
Anand Sinha, yeah.
Sinha, okay. How did you guys come to this resolution from your homeowners association to support this?
So we've met as a group. We have a WhatsApp group. We share all the information. We have a email group. We share all the information. So a number of times, at least 15 to 20, have met in Choice Group where they presented the entire plan. We discussed internally after that. I sent a letter out to you on October 29th of 2024. I shared that letter with the whole group, all the residents. And also, when I presented in our session with the Planning Commission, I shared this letter. And same, we had a meeting a couple of days ago. I shared that we are going to be having this zoning board of appeals meeting, and we'll be presenting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments.
You're welcome.
Any other members of the public? I don't see anyone else coming forward. Mr. Eisenbacher, I think we have at least one other written correspondence regarding this application,
Yes.
or one or two?
Yes, we received a copy of the letter from the gentleman who just spoke that was sent to to Mr. Brent Savadon. And then we have one on the table addressed to the Zoning Board of Appeals from Jerry Rauch, which is 4187 Penrose Drive. He has a very detailed explanation to the Board of Appeals. At the end, in his final paragraph, he states, in conclusion, the request should be denied as the subject site for 4 reasons, is not constrained, consisting of 5 single-family home sites, 25.3 acres. The problem is the applicant is trying to fit 36 homes on the site. Number 2, the characteristics of the property do not make compliance with the dimensional requirements difficult. Number 3, characteristics of the property do not make compliance with the dimensional requirements difficult, and the design has been created by the current applicant. And 4, the proposed variance would be harmful, resulting in an increase in density or building mass comparable to the neighboring properties. And I believe that was the only letter we received, and only speaker from.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Hey, sorry.
Can you identify yourself, please?
Of course, yeah. My name is Nathan Belil. My wife and I actually just bought in Stonehaven, what is it called? Stonehaven Woods? Yeah. Yeah. So we just moved in this weekend. So I had no idea, and this, proposed development is, basically on the other side of our backyard. So I have a sudden curiosity in what is going on. So I guess I also echo being in favor of like the best outcome that's going to be, not affect our property values negatively, logically, right? And then also, I guess I'm curious as to because I'm new, where we are in the process as far as like, is this development like a go? Is something going in and it's just a matter of what is going in? Or is it still a matter of being evaluated as far as, will something be built? Does that make sense?
Sure. So I don't know if you were here when Mr. Evans introduced the case. So this is a matter.
It's a little late, yeah.
Yeah, this was a matter that originated in the Planning Commission
Okay.
with their proposed development. But one of the prerequisites to have that development move forward is they need this variance request that we're talking about here tonight, which is the 3 feet variance for the homes.
Right.
So depending upon how this board handles that specific variance request, will then go back to the Planning Commission for further consideration.
Okay, so we're still sort of in the midst of determining.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Sounds good. Thank you for kind of catching me up. I appreciate it. I have to report back to my wife as well. So
That's very important.
yes,
Yeah.
correct. So nice to meet everybody, sort of, right? We're excited to be in Troy. So.
Congrats on the new home.
Thanks.
Yes. Welcome to Troy. Thank you. Okay, any other public comments? I don't see anyone else. We have all of our written correspondence handled, so we will close the public hearing. And at this point, I guess we will move it back to members of the board for any discussion or any motions. First of all, I'll open it up. Is there anyone who wishes to be recognized for purposes of discussion or comment? Mr. McCauley.
I'll start. So I struggle with this, even though it's only 3 feet, I struggle with it. And the reason why I struggle with it is basically, if I look at the consistency of our ordinance of staying from neighborhood node to neighborhood node, yes, that they might be, the Stonehaven homes might be taller behind them, but that doesn't change the consistency of our neighborhood node ordinance. Would that be similar in other areas for coming in for variances for that? And I don't believe that would be true. I think that Mr. Roche lives by the northwest corner one, where we've had variances requested from there. And again, those are different types of homes, and the height discrepancy is much more different. If I look at the square footage of the single-family attached residence that we're talking about here, 3,000 square feet, and they're currently only using 26.8 proposed square footage that they have, where 30 is allowed. My question is, why are they, this is more about putting more units in a small area, in my mind, because now we can fit more in there. Whereas if they brought this down to 30 feet and expanded the size of them, their footprint, then they would be able to have the same square footage, but not as many units in the same area. So I would agree with Mr. Roush's conclusion that this is by the builder's design, and that they can do better with that. And I'll be honest, I'm looking at the site plan for this, with these roads going in that. I think it's going to be a mess. I don't like it at all. That's my personal opinion. I just don't like it at all. I think we're trying to jam a lot of stuff in a little area, and I am not supporting this at all.
All right, thank you, Mr. McCauley. Next, anyone else? Yeah.
I'm looking at the section that is referenced here, section 8.06B, that's on page 6, and one of the things it says is that the design roofs that are appropriate to the architectural style of building and create an create an appropriate visual exterior mass of the building given the context of the site. And that phrase kind of caught my attention, is that the context of the site, I think, is there is another subdivision next to it, which is the Stonehaven subdivision. And so here it specifically says that design your roofs appropriate to the architectural style of the building in the context of the site. And I think it is appropriate that if you try to create your design in a way to emulate what is next to you. So I think if you have to kind of try to keep your design at least somewhat similar and make it compatible to what is next to you, then can you make that in 30 feet is the question. And I think what they're saying is that that's not possible. So that's the practical difficulty.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kinkree. Mr. Fox.
Yeah, well, I guess when it comes to this specific property, I think I am kind of in Mr. McCauley's camp where I have a little trouble figuring out exactly why it can't just be, I mean, Mr. Eisenbacher cited an example where the house was, redesigned to kind of go a little into the ground. To me, if there is another plausible solution, we're not really supposed to be handing out variances to get that solution. I do also want to make more of a I typically end up doing this in planning commission, but when it comes up and I'm in a public forum, I'm going to mention it. I come to this board from the background of someone who rented like 11 different homes before I ended up buying the home that I'm in. So I just, whenever I hear comments on like how renters lower property values and how renters aren't necessarily good additions to the community, I do counter that. Having renters near your property does not lower your property values. There's no science backing any of that. There's no studies, no research. There's feelings for sure, but nothing that's based in a way that we should be legislating or deciding as an official body. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that, as again, my background is coming as I guess a transient folk who travels around. So, but yeah, as it relates to this specific property, I don't really see a need for the variance. I see it more as a want.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fox. So I guess I have a few concerns based on what the discussion has been so far. I think the first thing is we have to recognize as a board we can't take into consideration financial hardship to the property owner when requesting a variance request or when considering a variance request. So to the extent that this is addressing financial considerations, we have to take that off the table. It's just not something we're permitted to consider. The second thing that concerns me, and this, I think Mr. Fox mentioned this and Mr. Eisenbacher has kind of mentioned this as well, and this is also brought out by Mr. Savadant's correspondence to us or to Mr. Evans that was forwarded to us. It seems to me obvious that it is possible to build on this property, and it is possible to build the sort of structures that the applicant wants to build on this property. So to Mr. Fox's point, this strikes me more as a want more than a need, to the extent that a variance request, we typically look at those as the property itself is situated in such a way that there's really no other way to use the property but for some sort of variance request. And I don't see that the applicant is satisfied that element, that this is an exceptional characteristic of the property. I can understand fully why they may be dissatisfied with how the zoning laws are written, but I don't know that this is the forum for us to address that. That seems to me something for the Planning Commission or the City Council, if they're not content with the way the zoning laws are written, which goes back to my question of, I think, to say the exceptional characteristic is the height, I think is actually just pointing back to the fact that there's dissatisfaction with the zoning laws as written, not something specific to the property. So I'm in the same boat as Mr. McCauley and Mr. Fox. I don't see myself supporting this variance request. Any other members of the board wish to be recognized? Or do we have a motion that a board member wants to present? Mr. McCauley.
I'd like to make a motion at this time. I would like to make the motion for the variance request for 39981 Crooks Road be denied for the following reasons. The exceptional characteristics of the property is sought makes compliance with dimensional requirements more difficult than should be the case. That is not the issue here. The characteristics which make compliance dimensional requirements difficult must be related to the premise sought. They're talking about that, that's okay. Characteristics that make the dimensional requirements shall not be of a personal nature. I think my personal opinion is that it's a money nature, we can get more units in there. The characteristics which make the compliance difficult were not created by the previous owner, and I think that would, with that many units in there, that would alter the characteristics of the area. So for those reasons, I make the motion to deny the variance.
Second, but I would also want to add that under item B, the characteristics as they relate to another property, a lot of the reason that the size of this is being pushed is in comparison to Stonehaven, which are the neighboring properties. So I don't know if that would factor into item B, that it is kind of because of neighboring properties that this is being discussed. But yeah, either way, I second Mr. McCauley's motion.
Okay, motion to deny brought by Mr. McCauley, seconded by Mr. Fox. Any further discussion? Members of the board?
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes, Mr. Eisenbacher.
Again, looking at the documentation that was presented to us, both in the packet on page 24, where it's got a cross-sectional view of the house, showing the ground level 15 inches up off the grade, and then the handout, which is 1.5 feet off the grade, which is half of the request. Unfortunately, it's not much of a change to the roof slope. I can't see visually, I don't see roof slopes that accurately for the amount of change that would be needed. I know it's a difficulty for the architect to get the amount of square feet in the upper half story, but I believe there is a solution possible, and it was done at another neighborhood node in the city, and we've had litigation on this matter in front of this board and with the city. There hasn't been enough information, enough of a reason to grant this variance for me to be satisfied.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Unless there's any further discussion, I think we're ready to vote. Mr.
I just have kind of looking for a clarification that if the practical difficulty only relates to the property, and in this case it's about the height, so if the ZBA, does not look at anything other than a practical difficulty that relates only to the property and nothing other than that, then should this simply be sent to the Planning Commission saying this does not fall in our bucket?
Well, I think the applicant has to come here because they're seeking a specific variance request. So we have to deal with that variance request.
Okay.
Depending upon how we deal with it, then they go back to the Planning Commission and then move forward in whatever direction they move forward. Right? That's, Mr. Fox, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then how do you apply the practical difficulty criteria if it only applies to the property? And then what's the criteria for the height? What do you do there? I'm kind of a little bit confused.
Yes, Mr. Fox.
I guess my thought would be it has to come before this body simply because it's a violation of the ordinance. Like, regardless of what's going on with practical difficulty and adjacent properties and whatnot, the fact that there is an ordinance that it's crossing and they are seeking relief, it would come here to us, and that's why we discuss it first, if that helps.
Okay, I think we're ready to vote. So this is the motion is on the table is to deny. So a yes would be to deny, a no would be to not deny.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Mr. Bostonbrook,
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher,
Yes.
Mr. Kenkre,
No.
Mr. Fox,
Yes.
Mr. Forster,
Yes.
Ms. Chambers.
Yes.
Motion to deny has been granted. So that concludes 5A. Appreciate those who came out to present the case for 5A. We'll move on to 5B. If I can get my agenda in front of me a second. This brings us to 363 West Big Beaver. Again, this was on the agenda last month but was adjourned, so we are taking it up again this month. Mr. Evans, whenever you're prepared, let's introduce 363 West Big Beaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this is a variance request to allow a residential apartment tower addition be set back 0 feet from the rear property line where the zoning ordinance requires a 40-foot setback. And this is for property just south of City Hall, south and a little bit east. In the area here, we have Big Beaver as the east-west street with I-75, and the subject property is outlined in red. Now, this is a zoomed-in version of that with the zoning ordinance overlay colors on here. Here's the subject property, and everything you see in this peach color is zoned Big Beaver District, including the subject property. There's an additional close-up of the property as it looks right now. Now, I've zoomed in on the back part of the property because this is where the variance is being requested at the south property line. So here's some renderings that the applicant has provided to kind of give a scope. This is the existing building, and then this is the new construction to the left here. And in this rendering, we are looking at the property from ground level from the south right here, and they provide some additional detail as well. And these are all out of the application, which is part of their planning commission items. So in this drawing here, the applicant has demonstrated that in this hatched area would be the area that if a variance were granted, this would be the area that would encroach into the required 40-foot rear setback. Right here, this hatched area. Now, this is the property line here, and this is the neighbors down here. So you're gonna have a few things like driveways and some landscaping that are allowed typically within that 40-foot rear yard setback. And this is an additional overlay with some additional features of what's gonna be at that level and above it. And another rendering provided by the applicant, just kind of illustrate what they'd like to do. Then additional elevations here. So with that being said, I'll turn it back over to the, and this was also before the Planning Commission, and because a variance couldn't be, was requested, they couldn't take action. The next step is here and then go back to the Planning Commission.
All right, thank you, Mr. Evans. Any member of the board have a question for city staff? Not seeing any questions? Oh, Mr. Fox.
I guess just a quick procedural question. On the back end, when applicants are approaching the planning office, with just out of curiosity, in both of these cases, the applicant went to the planning commission. I'm presuming just kind of got feedback as opposed to getting any actual actions done, and then they came here to the ZBA. Is that a result of like the applicant requests to go to planning commission first, or how do they end up getting to planning commission and then getting bounced through to here?
Oh, well, typically it is something that goes before the Planning Commission, but either in the design, maybe there's a pre-application meeting with the city planning staff, or as they whittle it down and get closer to development, they realize it's very important for them. So, or if something's identified after they submit to the planning commission, maybe we identified that, hey, you might not have been aware, but you need a variance to this. So then, at that point, they can decide, do I ask for the variance, do I modify my plan? If they want to proceed with the variance, the planning commission simply takes no action. They can provide some comment, and we'll do a full review at the planning commission level, but they can't take any action.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, any other questions for city staff? All right, seeing none. Mr.
Sorry, I was
Eisenbacher.
We have an item on the table in front of us related to, I believe, a separate matter, which was 2600 Livernois.
I think that's for our miscellaneous.
Is this just, okay, that's not this,
That's for the
okay.
next one, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we will invite the applicant forward or his representative. If you could identify yourself, sir, and proceed.
Good evening. Thank you very much for hearing my application. My name is John Marusich Architecture in Bloomfield, and I'm here for obvious reasons. Get a zoning setback. I think that I provided to you some response to the questions, but I want to emphasize that what I really am emphasizing here is that an exception that exists in this site that doesn't, I believe, exist in other opportunities for development such as this. And could you put up the site plan or the plan so we can look at that? Just, yeah, well, the one, I'm sorry, right there. That's probably a good one right there, okay? What we're acknowledging is the fact that there is this 40-foot setback, but our exception that we're asking consideration for is that the property that you see there in the pink, I believe, is actually property that's not owned by Mr. Simon, but he has a restrictive, exclusive easement to that property. Only he can use that property. Now, it's very rare. I've never come across it. I'm sure maybe you not have come across it. But so to the degree that, for the most part, there's a 10-foot buffer, and then there's a 20-foot parking. And in addition to that, there is in the yellow a shared easement for the hotel and for him only. In addition to that, in the, I think it's blue, we have a shared easement. The shared easement is a particular feature that allows the parking count for our establishment to utilize. So for the most part, that portion of it is shared between us and the hotel. The yellow is shared as an easement, but the pink is something that's exclusive to us. So we're looking for here is the fact that for the most part, we actually have already a setback that's exclusively ours. Now, it's not an owned property. Our property line isn't there. We are asking for us to the fact that actually the hotel can't even park there. Okay, and hotels, interestingly enough, the hotel owners are partners with, as I stated in my document, are partners in a hotel development in Ann Arbor. They actually support this. They have no problem because they have enough parking for their development. That was expressed to Mr. Sabadan a while ago. So the exception here is, as I stated. So we're not using all of it. We're using a portion of it. I think about 2/3 of that rear is a 40-foot setback. As you can see, we set the other building back. We feel that we just are asking for this allowance in this particular case. If we push the building back, then some of those features that you see there will be just parking. Or just, you know, you'll see parking setback 40 feet. I have, in consideration of this added opportunity, put a green wall. And I feel that the green wall is a feature that gives another value to a trade-off of the setback, because if we have if we are not allowed the setback and the building goes all the way back, well, then you're going to be seeing some very utilitarian features as opposed to a green wall. So we're thinking that we're offering a consideration that I think is of added value to the future of the building.
Can I ask a few questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. My first question is, why, so there's this close relationship between your client and then the owner of the property adjacent. Why didn't your client, or why didn't they just convey this property, this section to your client so he owns it? Why is he going for an easement as opposed to, I mean, if it's restrictive and no one else can use it, why didn't he just convey it so you're not in front of us?
Why should he? You're asking, why doesn't he? And I'm responding back, why should he? It's a part of his ownership of the land.
Right, but if he's, I guess what I don't quite understand is, so what happens if the property owned by his business associate, what if he sells the property? And now he's got a building up to his property line? The new owner.
The new owner of what?
So
a hotel?
Of the hotel.
Okay.
If he sells if that property is sold, now he's subject to an easement that abuts the property line. He's got no setback.
Okay. Well, when a property is sold, there's usually a title search.
Right.
Right, okay, and the title search would acknowledge the fact that this issue exists. So the new owner would have to accept that easement, which is what has occurred when that Drury Hotel was purchased by the Bacalls.
Does that potentially affect the last characteristic of a practical difficulty, that it would negatively affect the value of another piece of property? Because now someone has to buy a piece of property that has a building up into its property line.
Well, again, I'm indicating that, in effect, that easement is restricted. It goes with the property. The effect of that easement is essentially a setback, or at least 30 feet of the required setback. So to the degree that I'm just saying that if someone were to buy the hotel, he would have to accept that situation. I mean, and there's no reason for the owner, whether it's Mr. Simon or someone else, to have to take extra consideration for that issue. It went with the property. When Mr. Simon bought the property, that easement was there.
Has the easement been executed?
It's there. It's in title. It's recorded.
This easement is recorded already?
Oh, it's not been recorded. It's been recorded for over 20 years. Ever since that building.
That restrictive easement's been in there since for 20 years?
Well, it came with the property. Actually, interestingly enough, when we did the survey for this, that's when personally I acknowledged it. Mr. Simon brought in title company, brought in his, he's a lawyer, so he brought in the people that within his company that handle that type of property to acknowledge it, to make sure that it was actually legally there. So it's there. It's not something that was created by Mr. Simon. It was there.
And then I guess one last question. Could you just clarify what is the exceptional characteristic? Is it the fact that there's a business or a hotel that's at that rear property versus a residential building? Is that what a residential home, is that the exceptional characteristic?
Well, let me just say that's an added consideration. I believe that if this property abutted a residential property, that the impact of a large building, I totally understand why the 40-foot setback would be there. I really do, okay? The thing here is that it's an isolated piece of property, which if you looked at what Mr. Evans showed, a lot of it goes all the way back to the freeway. Okay, this one is like an island, which is another exception I probably should have noted. So we abut a residence, or excuse me, we abut a commercial facility. The owner has no problem with what we're doing. He's accepting the fact that this is the condition. He has enough parking to facilitate his operation. He's newly renovating it. In fact, as I understand, and again, he's going to be knocking down the restaurant that's on the side. That is only because there's a big berm obscuring the view of the restaurant. The restaurant, as you probably are aware of, just in the limited time I've been in this city, or at least even adjacent to the city, that restaurant's the last 2 or 3 years and they failed. So they're just accepting the fact that it's not going to be a restaurant. Okay, it's going to be parking. So they don't see this as being an issue.
So just one more time, what is the exceptional characteristic for this property, just so I'm clear?
Okay. As I stated in my first half of my response, the exceptional issue is that we have a restrictive easement that is actually utilized only by the owner of the 363. It's approximately 30 feet. It's actually 30 feet, a 10-foot buffer and 20-foot parking. And the yellow, as noted there, is a access easement only, so that, as you can see off to the side, there's a drive where cars from the 363 property have access to drive in and pull in and park in the back. That condition exists right now, okay? So do you see that? I just want to make sure that's understood, that they have access to that particular site in the zoning variance. Or it's the ZBA variance. Part of what I'm requesting is the fact that the consideration of that access easement be included as a part of the 40-foot variance.
Okay. Mr. Fox.
Well, hello again. I don't know if you remember, but when you came and presented this to Planning Commission, I indicated, my role kind of on both boards, ZBA and Planning Commission. And we did discuss a little bit in terms of the practical difficulty. At the time, you were referencing the building at the front of the property and how it affected the topography of the site and how that was what was encouraging you to push back to the rear property line. There's the original building that's at the front of the lot. And I guess I'm just curious, is that still factoring into the decision to bring up to the rear property line? Because topography,
Can you restate that? Because I want to make sure I don't misunderstand that.
So one of the considerations and the standards that we look at is the topography of the site, which would include existing buildings and existing, geography, I suppose, on the site. And I guess when we last spoke about it at Planning Commission, you indicated the building up at the front was a big part of the decision to bring things back to the rear property line. I guess is that still the case? Is the building up at the front a consideration that's also leading to the request for this variance, or how does that building play into it all?
Well, let me go back further, okay? This zoning ordinance is the allowance of building on a parking lot, as long as you provide parking that is demonstrated for the primary use, you're allowed to then build on the parking lot, okay? So that's an understood condition. All right, so majority of what may be forthcoming in other developers taking opportunity of the situation will be for an existing building to exist and a vacant parking lot in front or in back, in this case in back, to be utilized for a more density development opportunity. Now that was the master plan. That was the big ordinance here. It's like, we're gonna take these parking lots, which for the most part are vacant 16 hours out of the week, and turn them into something to create a level of dynamic vitality, street action, and the like, okay? So to the degree that that building in front is always gonna be there, it's not gonna leave. Now, maybe what was talked about during the Planning Commission was they didn't like that drive-through out front. Okay, that was what was really brought up, okay? And so that much I know. It's like, well, can you get rid of the drive-through? Okay, and fortunately there was a person on the planning commission who had a credit union or works in a credit union. They exclaimed that, a drive-through is one of those values, okay, to any bank because they're not allowed now. They're very restrictive. And I think I mentioned during the planning commission presentation is that I was involved with numerous attempts to put a banking drive-through in Birmingham. And we did all sorts of jangling and wangling to try to achieve that because of the desire to have that there, okay? So all I'm saying here is that as much as I don't recall that being specific, okay? But I do remember the conversation in regards to the drive-through. So the building is there, whether it's there. If I were to have another client down the street that had the building where the parking lot's in front or on the side, the building would always stay and we would work towards that. So let's just say I don't believe the building placement is a factor in our, the major factor and the primary factor that I believe that we are approaching this is the fact that we had this restrictive easement in the rear, and for the most part, it's our land. We don't own it, but we use it, you see? So that's the exception. And I don't think I have a leg to stand on, basically, if I didn't have that exception. Because, all right, now, I might say I disagree in principle with the 40-foot setback, okay? But I understand it's there. I disagree in principle because what are you going to have there? You're going to have a parking, or as you see, a lot of utility functions there. But I believe that our precedent for coming here is the condition I stated, okay?
Okay, thank you. Any other members of the board? Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yes, thank you. When I first looked at this property and how it's laid out, I thought it was quite unique how you've got one residential property with two other one commercial property surrounded by two other commercial properties, like in the center of a U shape. And then I was thinking about all the times I've visited really big cities, such as obviously Detroit or New York, or most recently I visited Boston, and every square inch is used because it's at a big premium. Obviously, being close to a freeway exit gives it a big premium for access. With this development, I didn't see all the details in your packet, but the parking situation, are you making it more convenient for the people that live and work in that building to access the contained parking versus this off-site and the rear building spots?
Well, Mr. Evans, I was hoping you were going to show the video. That's one of the reasons I approached you earlier. The video would have a much more dynamic demonstration of the totality of the project. Mr. Fox saw it. So there is an incredible direct connection of the building in the front to our building. There's an incredibly dynamic plaza on top of this. Again, it's not been, is there any opportunity for a photograph to show that?
Did you want, he had a video?
Yes, can we
Try
please?
to be, and since he's here.
You can play the video if you.
We just give you more of an understanding of the totality of the project. Thank you, Mr. Evans. Now, see, again, you stated, we tried to, the Planning Commission, I let Mr. Eisenbacher, you stated it very well, that we're talking about a suburban community that's becoming an urban community. And in an urban community, there's more density. In the urban community, you are right up to certain property lines. That's just the raw reality of it. If we were in Boston, Chicago, New York, you wouldn't even have what you have here. I think that the vision that was put forth by Brent Savedant and the planners was to see the evolution, ultimately, of greater density. Now, I feel when I came across, when Frank Simon, when I found out Frank Simon owned that black building in front and that parking lot, and I'm kind of a little bit of a nerd on planning, okay? I saw the opportunity that didn't exist in any other community in Metro Detroit to add density to the parking lot. I think this was an incredibly innovative aspect of the Troy to say you can build there as long as you compensate for parking. There is a project in Clawson that I am involved with, where behind that Office Depot and the like, which we're planning on putting something on the backside of that. And we're going through a lot of gyrations in order to try to achieve that, but we're parking in a parking lot that's not being used. So the challenge here in this building is that we have this existing building built in 1960s, and we're trying to develop a connection between the building and the street. And so there's pathways on either side of the black building. And we did a lot of wayfaring, a lot of like demonstration of how, so you can see a little bit better how the green wall helps you facilitate a softer back of the building. You can see that access drive that comes from the parking lot. That accesses those cars, as not the cars alone that's adjacent to the rear, but also the 25 spaces. Now you can see the connection. We'll get a little tighter to that connection in a moment here. But the major situation here is that the city wants to have green space. We've created green space on the roof, a very, very dynamic, utilized green space that the office as well as the residents have opportunity to use. And again, a lot of dynamic cities that have a lot of density have all of their green playgrounds up in the air. Birmingham advanced their ordinance that said that you can actually have access to the roof. I got a small project, I got a number of projects in Birmingham, but one project recently where the planner even said, are you gonna make sure you put a green roof on and have access? Absolutely, okay? And you can see that even what we did in the roof on top of the building is a green roof. It's not a recreation roof, but it's a sedum roof, which would capture gray water. And we're gonna make this very LEEDs. But you can see here, we try to utilize features that would advance dynamics of city living in a suburban community. So we maximize opportunities to access the green roof. So, to the degree that we're asking for this variance, yes, the letter of the law speaks to what you're saying. I'm not going to deny that. But I think the exception is that we're trying to create added value. Now, that may not be, again, a condition of your zoning. I understand that. But at least, thank you very much, Mr. Evans, for bringing this to the fore. So you can see there's a connection at the ground level between the building, the office building, and the parking. We had two entrances to the tower up above. And you can see this connection between the office, and that was a part of the requirement of the zoning, is to have a connection between the primary function and the secondary function. Now, is it restricted? No, it's not restricted. But, you still got to find your way up there. Okay, so we just feel we're creating this dynamic environment that's going to be very attractive to the city and to this development.
So it does look like it'd be much more convenient to park in the covered parking right underneath the apartment or right behind the office building.
Totally agree with you. But again, there's parking requirements.
Yeah.
You see? And so in this particular case, we had to go through a traffic engineer, which is understandable. We have a shared parking condition, okay? And I actually physically took pictures of every hour throughout the week, the parking that was in the rear. This parking that's there now is basically 50% utilized. The building is full, okay? The building is full. And I mean, I got pictures, it's documented as part of, which I think Mr. Fox may have had access to in the plan. See, here's our wayfaring. We're trying to create this dynamic walk to the new building. And both sides have this type of feature. And it's lit up. It's a night shot, so you can't see all that dynamic little night shot. But we really tried to emphasize the connection to the to the sidewalk, because at some point in time, there's going to be more density in this city. At some point in time, people are going to be actually walking up and down your street. Just coming over here right now, you know, I was looking at all that retail along Big Beaver, and you got the front, and then you have the rear, where everything's set up so that at some point in time, there's going to be a dynamic walkable city context. And the only way you're going to get a dynamic walkable city context is to have residential living in the city that matches your office environment. You got all these offices. Most of these people, you know, they travel someplace like maybe Royal Oak or Ferndale or some other place where they get that urban living. Now you have it here, or at least the beginnings of it. So, see, my project is one of the first ones out the gate for what you're trying to achieve here. And so consequently, it's going to be met, understandably, with a lot of scrutiny, okay? And so, you know, first one out of the gate gets it. Okay. So, thank you for seeing and listening to my discussion.
Yep. The video answered my questions about parking and flow throughout the site, and it also helps explain how the setback isn't really as much of a line with that property if it were, like, obviously, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, to a residential or to another kind of use. This is a continuous property, and with an easement, it makes sense. So I'll be in favor.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time for the presentation and the video. We don't usually get videos. All right, we'll open up the public hearing. Obviously, there's no one here. I don't know, is there any written, I don't believe we have any written correspondence
Tony?
either.
We have one item on the table, and it's from the petitioner. His firm, right?
I believe that's just, is that a supplemental?
Yep.
Supplemental to the previous.
Yep.
Okay, so we will close the public hearing. Bring it back now to the board for discussion. Mr. Fox.
Yeah, I guess to provide you guys all with a little bit of context, when this did end up coming to the Planning Commission, as the applicant indicated, there were conversations about the drive-through, there were conversations, you know, the whole time we were kind of aware that, you know, this ZBA meeting was going to be coming up and that was going to kind of preclude a lot of our conversations there. But one thing I can confirm is that a majority of the Planning Commission, this was a cool build. Like, we liked the second floor green space, we liked the general walkability and the innovative design of it all. You know, it kind of just all boiled down to this variance kind of being the big thing that hindered us on our end and then kind of going forward. For me personally, I think, you know, we've got that list in the first, you know, standards of the zoning ordinance, there's that topography. Which to my understanding, you know, includes like existing aspects of the site, such as a very large 1960s building that they're trying to work around. So to me, I see it as a cool build that would be difficult to do without some leniency in the ordinance. So that's where I'm at personally, is that I'm in favor of granting the ordinance, but I'd be curious to hear what everybody else has to say, though.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fox. Any other members of the board? Mr. McCauley?
Mr. Bosenbrook, Chair Bosenbrook, where you were going with the easement versus owning, I understood that completely and got it in the sense that if they owned that property, they wouldn't have to come to us because they would have the setback. And that easement, they said, even though they have exclusivity, if they were to sell it, the next person coming in would be inheriting a zero setback to the property. Now, if I'm looking at that design, there's parking spaces. If a new owner came in, what could they do differently to that area in that setback? Really by virtue of the buildings around it and that building, that it's pretty much locked into parking. It's not like they can take that out and make it green space, or they're saying I'm losing light because I have something there or anything like that. But what you said made complete sense to me, and I understood it. I'm like, yeah, I mean, inheriting that zero setback is not a good thing. But after looking at the setup of this, I don't think it's a factor in this, in the regards. I don't think it's going to devalue the property behind it or the owner of that space. It would have been a lot cleaner if they owned it. We wouldn't be sitting here today, like you said. So I'm in favor of it, only because I look at that piece of that easement that they have exclusivity to, is there's no use for it other than what it currently would be. So from that standpoint, I'm in favor of it also, even though I do completely understand your point and rationale behind that.
All right, thank you. Appreciate the context. All right, any other members of the board, or is there a motion that's going to be raised? Mr. Eisenbacher?
Not hearing any further discussion, I would like to move the resolution to approve. And then let me get to the exact language. For item A, the exceptional characteristic is the fact that it is surrounded on all sides by other commercial, and there is an easement directly behind the building in the area of the setback. The second one, it's not some other location. The third one, C, it's not of a personal nature. D, the characteristic which makes compliance with other was not created by the current or previous owner. It's just where the property line was, and they do have an easement of comparable size. And E, the proposed variance is not harmful or alter the essential character of the area in which the property is located. This is Big Beaver zoned, which is intended for higher density, higher utilization. It does not impair an adequate supply of light and air to adjacent properties or unreasonably increase the congestion in public street or increase the danger of fire or endanger the public safety or unreasonably diminish or impair established property values within the surrounding area. The adjacent owners are supporting this property or supporting this development, and in any other respect impair the public health, safety, comfort, morals, or welfare of the inhabitants within the city. I didn't see any of that, and it will get further review by the Planning Commission before approval.
Motion from Mr. Eisenbacher.
I would like to second on if Mr. Eisenbacher is amenable to adding in, I think the location of the existing building also factors in to the overall reason why they couldn't go forward in the property away from the property line. So if you're fine with adding that in, I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Mr. Eisenbacher, seconded by Mr. Fox. I'll just say I'm still not convinced. I think the way that section standard 1 is worded, and I appreciate my colleagues, I do think it's a cool build. I'm not going to deny that. I'm really impressed with it. I just think the way standard 1 is worded, if the exceptional characteristic that we're talking about is the easement, that exceptional characteristic is supposed to make it substantially more difficult to do whatever the variance is intended to do. If the exceptional characteristic is the variance, then I guess the argument is that's making it easier. So I'm just not persuaded that this fits within the standards, but I understand where my colleagues are. Unless there's any other discussion, I think we're prepared to vote. Mr. Evans, so this is a motion to grant the variance for the reasons stated by Mr. Eisenbacher. So yes would be to grant.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes.
Ms. Chambers.
Yes.
Mr. Bossenbrook.
No.
Mr. Fox.
Yes.
Mr. McCauley.
Yes.
Mr. Forster.
Yes.
Mr. Kenkre.
Yes.
All right, motion to grant has carried the day. So thank you, sir. We appreciate your time. Appreciate your presentation.
Oh, thank you very much. It was a very challenging situation. I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to see how you maintain that second-story green space.
Always somebody.
Sprinkler system.
Understandable. My client has multiple properties with multiple maintenance people. It's going to be much more of a challenge.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that takes us through our hearing of cases, section 5. We're at 8:30. I know we have a couple items for miscellaneous. Is there any communications, Mr. Evans?
I think Mr. McCauley wanted to do a brief report on one of the agenda items, the handouts there.
Everybody received this handout. Basically, I followed up with Mr. Evans. I had asked a question. Back in 2021, July, we were approached for 2600 Livernois, which was the old resident inn by I-75. They wanted a variance because they didn't have the square footage for that. At that time, Troy Police Department cited the number of calls and the types of calls that they received. That data is included with there. I asked Mr. Evans to follow up with the City of Troy Police Department. And if you look on the back page, I mean, they originally cited that they had numerous arrests for drug possession, armed, involving firearms, shooting incidents. Since we approved that, was not a nightly rental, but more of a yearly long condo rental, that if you look at it, that decreased down to 17, 34, and 37 calls, opposed to the last couple of years, 192, 124, and all of them were minor incidences that they were called for. So by that rezoning and changing that property the way we did, that this verifies that we did the right thing. So I was just kind of a pat on the back to everybody that was involved in that. But I think it's good to see that we don't need feedback on most of them, but I think that's a good one just to show that that was a variance, that was a well-placed one for us.
Well, that's a good real-world example of the good work that we can do. So thank you for tracking that down, Mr. McCauley, and giving us that example. That's good. Yeah, Mr. Fox.
Yeah, also, just really quick under communications, I realized with how quick last month's meeting was, I believe, or maybe I'm mixing up my timelines, the Planning Commission had a joint meeting with the City Council regarding possible designs for a new library to be put in here on City campus. I know a couple of ZBA members were in attendance, but if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, I highly encourage you to take a peek. City Council has got some big decisions in front of them in terms of how we're going to approach potentially, an ordinance or, a bond being proposed to the residents. So the library will be a part of it. They're discussing what other things might be an aspect of it. So I just encourage, my fellow ZBA members and then anyone at home who's watching to look up, the joint meeting was televised, so you can look it up. I believe all of the designs and everything for the new library that's proposed are also available for public review. So please feel free to contact the city to take a look at all of that. Honestly, I thought it looked beautiful and really good. And I guess my other point is I did have a question. So I know we saw 2 cases today that will potentially go back to Planning Commission. I'm very clear that on the second one, when it comes to Planning Commission, I will recuse myself. With the first case, since we did deny the variance and it's going to be coming back to Planning Commission amended, will I be able to participate in that conversation with it amended? That's where I don't know if I should be recusing myself during the review of, I can't remember the address, 3991 Crooks.
So we'll have to see what we get from them, and I can talk further with, I believe it'll be Ms. Dufresne,
Okay.
her and I can chat about that. I guess it'll just kind of depend on what they submit, but we can definitely let you know in advance of the next Planning Commission meeting.
Much appreciated.
It's funny, I was actually just looking in to that to see, but I think it's going to depend a little bit too, I think, on what they submit and how that changes, so.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fox. I was not in attendance, but I did watch it on YouTube, so it was a good meeting. All right, I know we have a couple items on the miscellaneous agenda. Do we want to take a quick break or we want to power through it? Take a quick break? All right, so why don't we adjourn? And I saw a nod of the head. Maybe that wasn't the sense of the group. Do we want to take a quick break and then?
No.
Or do we want to just? Just do it?
I'm good to power through.
All right, let's power through it.
I've been in planning commission meetings till like
Should be
midnight
quick.
this past couple months, so.
Sometimes we have meetings that are like 20 minutes, so maybe we're not conditioned to have
Oh, yeah.
long
Yeah.
meetings. Okay, so let's move on then to item number 7, miscellaneous business. We have two things on the agenda. The first is to discuss recommending potential zoning ordinance text amendments to the Planning Commission. I guess just by way of brief background, I don't know if you recall, I think this maybe was last fall timeframe, we had discussed as a board the possibility when certain situations came up where we saw perhaps a repeated issue, cases coming before us or something that looked like it was a little off maybe with the zoning laws, that we might offer some sort of written resolution to the Planning Commission for consideration just by way of communication. I think Mr. Savinant gave us a memo kind of summarizing his guidance on that. I think, is it in the packet?
Yes, it is.
Yep.
Okay. And Mr. McCauley identified one situation that he thought might be appropriate to take a trial run at this. So I can yield the floor to Mr. McCauley if he wants to walk us through this possible amendment or this recommendation. I think what we might do is discuss it tonight. And if it seems like we want to move forward, maybe in the next month's meeting, we can have something maybe more concretely presented for us to consider and vote on and approve if that's where we want to go with it. So, okay, Mr. McCauley?
All right, back in October 15th of 2024 meeting, we had come in front of us 645 Burton Street. And basically, that's that little area down 14 Mile and Stevenson Highway area. And all those lots are like 60 foot wide by 120 deep. And that was like the third or fourth one that we had come in where their garage setback is only 3 feet from the property line, which makes sense. So we said, you know, we keep getting these people and they've got to apply for basically a $500 application fee. We got to grant some relief for those. So one of the things I looked into and I would like us to explore is a zoning overlay. If you look at the picture that Mr. Evans has put up, that's the area that we're talking about. Those are all non-conforming lots in that section. If we did a zoning overlay for those, what we would potentially be able to do is say, and how we craft the resolution is that if the person just was rebuilding their garage in the same footprint, that they need the building permit and everything else, but they don't need to come to us to get a variance because our variances are now different than when that was built. So we're giving them that leeway that their property only allows them to do. Mr. Evans also went through and did the square footage and the size frontages of those lots. As you can see, most of them are only 60 feet wide, so their narrowness is already an issue. So what I would like to see is us craft a resolution to present to the Planning Commission to add a zoning overlay for this area and craft it in a way that they still have to get their building permits, they still have to do everything, but it gives them the opportunity to replace their garage in the same footprint that it's currently at. So that's something, I have too much free time?
No?
Yeah, Mr. Fox.
Yeah, I know one aspect that came up back in that October meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, but the neighborhood is decently aging. So
Yes.
there is a good chance that we will see, more folks who need their garages redone just as time goes on, buildings age. So in general, yeah, I'm in favor of coming up with an exception. I think there's a lot of room for conversation there, having it where it's just literally replacing an existing building. I mean, I see it, so.
Yeah. So the language, the thing that I don't have is the language and how we would craft that language. And I think that would be something that we'd be looking at staff to hopefully give us language, a template to start with, and then adjust it from there. And then be able to get that to Planning Commission.
In Troy, is there an ordinance change then that
Can you
goes?
maybe talk?
I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
I just don't know, I just don't know if we can all hear you.
In Clausen, we have to do an ordinance change, it goes to our council and mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Is the same procedure here? Because I'm the ordinance officer, and that's why I know that, that's how we function. But if you want to change the ordinance in Troy, someone has to create it. We used to give it to our prosecuting attorney or our building official, and they would write it, and they would present it to council and mayor. Then it would come back, go to the clerk, it would be set out and agreed upon. What is the process in Troy?
I don't know what the process is. I think that's,
Oh,
Mr. Eisenbacher.
I believe it would go to the planning commission. Obviously, city staff has a lot of input on that because the planning commission is not
Is that-
professional
is that
planners.
Brent,
But yeah,
okay.
the city staff would work on a draft resolution
Oh,
between the
okay.
offices, give it to planning commission, and then it goes to city council for final approval.
oh, okay, all right. Just-
Right, and I
just
think the
checking.
planning commission has worked on several amendments in the last few years to
Okay.
the zoning ordinance text.
I wasn't aware, all right.
And also on this, if I may,
Yeah, go ahead.
we've also had a few of these on Witherby Street. There's a neighborhood in there with small lots. It may not be equally applicable because they have attached garages, but they still have very limited setbacks. And anytime they want to do any sort of addition to their house, it ends up in front of us, it appears, from my memories.
You referring to, it's Witherby off of Coolidge, or it's nearby Coolidge Highway?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
In the south west
Yep.
area of Troy.
Would it help if I showed that neighborhood on the aerial as well, just so people could?
Yeah,
Yeah, because I can't, I'm not picturing it.
And that, yeah, that's much more of a mixed neighborhood than the one that Mr. McCauley pulled up because it has been developed in phases.
So, yeah, so in here, we're looking at a Big Beaver, Adams, the railroad tracks.
Yep.
These are the offices. So
Yep.
this, portions of this area here, is that what you're referring to?
Yes, it's mostly all in the to the left of where you're pointing,
Here?
right there.
Okay, got it.
Surrounding that is very much larger, that was zoned when the ordinance was in place, but there's a small strip that they have to come to us often.
See, I don't remember having any come from us from there. That doesn't mean they haven't, but I just
Yeah.
don't remember any. I know that
I
we
kind
had-
of remember it. If I had to pick another area of the city that potentially, maybe this area could be looked at, I believe the Burtman neighborhood has more characteristics, at least without buildings, that, at least in my mind, we've seen more prevalent than this neighborhood. But that's just my memory.
So a couple of questions. I think maybe this is for Mr. McCauley. So I guess talking about maybe the scope of what this would look like, are we talking about, are we limiting it to garages,
Accessory building.
accessory building? And maybe this was
Setback for accessory building.
fleshed out in the language. I'm just talking about the scope. I mean, are we just talking about like these
Well,
accessory buildings?
are we
type-
considering the garage as an accessory building? Okay, so if we're talking basically, because, I mean, if it's an unattached garage, can they add another shed back there? So that'd be another accessory building. So what we don't want to get into that. I don't think we want to start adding multiple layers of accessory buildings into the plot. I think what we're looking at is trying to give relief for people that are houses that were built in the early 50s, replacing their garages or putting in a garage because they just had a carport. So from that standpoint, we're kind of looking from that standpoint of giving them relief. So that way, from that standpoint, not so much as, yeah, it's just relief for what they currently have in place.
So focusing on the garage is what we're thinking. Also, are we limiting it in scope in terms of specific neighborhoods? Are we going to try to define that in terms of,
I believe overlay is
it?
it's geographic.
Right.
Overlay.
It's that
overlay
specific
district.
area.
So we have to identify maybe specific areas?
Yes.
That would be subject to the overlay?
Yep.
Okay, I saw Mr. Forster.
I was just going to ask, would it be possible to write this based on all the elements that we feel were exceptional in terms of this neighborhood? Are there other neighborhoods that were built before the codes came into effect? Are other neighborhoods that have lots that are this size? Could we write it in such a way that if you qualify, and keep it to garages if that's what's important, so that we wouldn't have to go through and tick off every neighborhood. It would be if your lot and neighborhood fits these sets of parameters, then they would, they would get the exception.
Yeah, and that could be something that I think that the planning commission could look at and say, okay, we see the overlay for this, but we could expand it to all lots, like over in the Witherby area, that have so many square feet and they're non-conforming that they're able to do that for. So we're giving them an overlay for a specific area that we're requesting for them to look at. But if they want to expand it, they could, and that'd be something that they would be able to potentially do, instead of us going through the whole city street by street.
Okay. So maybe the resolution that we would propose would be maybe more generally, we're not proposing specific language per se, but we're thinking about, we're identifying areas of.
And I would do specific language too. So that way they can adjust it and do whatever they need to make it fit with, if they don't like what we have, to be able to make the resolution. Our resolution is just basically what we're recommending to them. What they decide to do and go to city council is going to be based on, doesn't have to be exactly our resolution. We're giving them here's a problem, here's what we think, how you can fix it, and then they can do what they need to adjust it and put it into place, so that way they can move forward to the city council. So we're giving them a framework for it.
Mr. Fox.
Yeah, I appreciate Mr. Forrester's thoughts. I appreciate the thoughts on potentially expanding it to be more general. There is admittedly a part of me that thinks maybe for now we just focus on the smaller area for a few reasons. Number one, city staff can be stretched very thin, and there's a lot going on this year. So any way we can try to help work within their busy schedules may be helpful. But then also, I can foresee there being a worry / I don't want to use the word resistance because I don't want to assume what anybody would say. But I think if we focused on a smaller neighborhood in this specific situation, we would be able to point to it as an example going forward, like later on, saying, maybe now we look at like the whole city because it worked here so well. It's not normally in my nature to think about small scaling things, but I think in this particular instance, approaching it from this neighborhood setting and then looking at potentially the whole city in like a later conversation may be helpful.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do we want to move forward from this point? Do we want to give some clear direction to city staff and then have something our next meeting? Does that seem reasonable, or do you want to be, or I guess would city staff need more clarity from us about what we're asking to put together at this point? Yeah, Mr. Forrester.
So based on what Mr. Fox said, I have no objection to starting small. Can we write something based on the criteria that we already have seen and we've already granted exceptions to in this neighborhood, right? I mean, if you took 5 of those and took a look at them, and your lot's not any more than 60 feet wide, and the house was built such and such a date, I think that'd be great if we did it for this neighborhood. And then you can take a look at it, and maybe you can upsize it after that.
What is the name of this?
Yeah, Mr. Evans.
Oh. Excuse me.
Yes.
What was the name of this neighborhood? Is it Red?
There were like 3 subdivisions
Red
or
Run?
4 subdivisions, I think.
Or Redwood,
Redwood Park, right?
something like that.
There's a, turn on the subdivision layer, because
Yeah, I think it's subdivisions.
I think it's a number of subdivisions.
Might make the
I
most
don't
sense.
believe, oh yeah, see, we've got,
Oh, Redwood's one of the streets.
Yeah, Redwood,
Yeah,
Lions.
so there's,
Redwood
the
Park
park.
is here. I don't believe the sub as a whole has any,
Name,
nameplate. Or,
yeah, it
when
looks
you
like it's
drive
got 1, 2, 3,
post-World War II.
4 subdivisions.
in, each
Mark
subdivision
Builders, Buckham Acres.
has, we have multiple names of different subdivisions. And none of them appear to be that consistent, so
I think there's maybe 4 or 5 that cover the
These, I see.
full.
I'm not sure this
area.
has a name.
Aren't those names on there that are coming up?
But it does appear, based on the spreadsheet data that I included, as well as anecdotally what we've seen before this board, but also when I've just sat down and looked at the areas, knowing the age of this neighborhood, there does appear to be quite a good number of detached garages that just don't seem like they're the 6 feet away, which is what we require now, that people have needed variances for. So I guess I'm trying to regurgitate maybe the characteristic, what we're trying to address is that the existing detached garages appear to be high percentage of them non-conforming due to the setback. And when people want to rebuild them or build new ones, other characteristics of the neighborhood, such as lot width or even lot area, have an impact with the increased setback on where they can maneuver those around. And I think we've heard some people say, my lot's a little small, I don't have the flexibility to put this exact same garage. I have to move it over closer to the middle of my yard. It takes up. So characteristic would be existing, apparent prevalence of existing non-conforming accessory buildings. And because it appears that there's a substantial number of nonconformities related to lot size, maybe lot width, but mostly lot size, I think. We want to be able to allow people to put these outbuildings up without having to get a setback variance, right?
Replace.
Replace, yeah, the existing setback, current setback.
Existing setback. And I believe at one time, I get the sense a lot of these are 3 feet away, but I really don't know. And I'm not sure we would be able to tell exactly how far away they are. A lot of them were built long ago, and sometimes the records, as we go further back, it would be tedious to figure out each one.
Are we saying as long as they remain within the existing footprint of the, like if they're trying to upgrade in terms of the setback, they're not going to get any closer to the property line?
And maybe that's a question for the board. Do we want to specify a different one, or just say, okay, if you're X number of feet off, you can be that, that might be a question for the board, just to decide which one they might want to do, or combination.
Mr. Forster and then Mr. McCauley.
I think it's a math problem. I mean, if you take a look at the exceptions that we've had, and what are they asking for, and if there's a consistency through there, I think you can calculate that.
Okay.
And so, what we've already granted, we want to tell them we'll grant that without them having to spend the $500 and the time, staring at us. So.
Gotcha.
I look at it two things. One, if they're going to replace the existing garage that they have there, so we will look at language to where it's to replace in the existing footprint, because even some of those garage floors are probably just so bad that they're going to tear it all out, re-put in new cement slab and everything else. So if they go back into the same footprint, that's not a big deal, that they're putting in the existing. The other thing is if they currently have a carport and they're going to put a new one in. So if they're going to put a new one in, then it might be the ability to put within 3 feet of the property line. Their setback is not 6 feet, but it's 3 feet from the property line. So that would be consistent with the neighborhood then. So you got your existing and anything that they want to replace a carport with a garage, that they know they could go to 3 feet because that's consistent with the neighborhood. So something like that, there's two parts to it.
And when you say, just so I understand, when you say carport, you mean a detached carport?
Yeah, they have detached carports. If you go to the house, it's just like an overhang. I mean, basically, it's just like a fiberglass overhang that they have on their house. They just pull their car underneath it. There's no sides on it. It's just like a,
Oh, yeah. I see, okay, yeah, and that for today, you'd have to meet the setback from the house.
right. So if they decide they want to get rid of their carport and put a garage in, then it's going to have to conform to the other ones in the neighborhood. So there would have to be we allow them to have that 3-foot setback and maybe the dimensions of what the current garage that they could put in there for that size lot space.
So ultimately, we're looking for reduced setbacks
Yep,
for detached garages.
right,
That's what I hear.
yep.
For that one neighborhood off 14 Mile.
For that, yes, exactly. Yep.
And that's, looking at the map, that's the only neighborhood in Troy that's off 14 Mile.
Oh, interesting.
Everything else is industrial or another city.
Clausen.
Done our work.
Yes.
I guess I'm a little nervous about making exceptions as opposed to reviewing these on a case-by-case basis. Because like you said, I just don't know how exactly we would spell out, what we're hoping to do here. And I think if we keep it on a case-by-case basis, it allows this board to, because I just don't know that we can come up necessarily with a one-size-fits-all or something that would be applicable to everybody in that area. And so I think keeping the process how we have it, with kind of reviewing on a case-by-case basis, allows this board to, make a determination on the merits of each home, depending on the specific and unique circumstances. I just don't know that there's a cookie cutter or a one-size-fits-all resolution or exception that this board might feel comfortable, with a blanket exception. So, I don't know. It can definitely be looked into. I just don't know what exactly that would say and look like.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I have the same, that's also been what that's why my question about, well, how do we frame this? Like, is it just cases where someone wants to work within the existing footprint? But I mean, we don't know every case where someone may want to make it longer, make it taller, make it wider, not to the property line, or maybe they would, or just to the, I don't know, and I'm not, familiar with overlay zones as the planning commission has dealt with them at times, but I don't know how to cabin this in a way that doesn't get away from us. But I understand it's not fair to necessarily have them come one by one here and pay $500 when more than likely, I can't say we would do it all the time, but more than likely we would probably find it reasonable to grant a variance. So I understand that's why I'm trying to figure out what are we going to put in a resolution or a letter to the planning commission that gives them something kind of they can concretely, sink their teeth into. Yeah, Mr. Fox.
I think the two examples Mr. McCauley cited earlier, I'm not sure if maybe we could get some elaboration on, I guess, where the conflict is with the two examples that Mr. McCauley cited earlier, specifically they're working within the same footprint, and then if they're replacing a carport, providing leniency as far as the setback requirements. Like, I guess, where's the confusion there? Those sound like two very specific situations that would then be able to be reapplied consistently to different houses. I'm not a lawyer. I want to make that clear. I'm curious where the confusion is. Especially if we geographically lock it into, Mark Builder sub, I think it was like 4 different subdivisions that covered the area we're discussing. But, Mr. McCauley, yeah.
Yes, Mr. McCauley.
Also, because when I look at one of the examples you said, what happens if they want to make it wider, taller, or something like that? They need a variance because that's not the same footprint. So if it's not the same height, the same dimensions, and they want to expand it size-wise or expand it height-wise, then they got to come to us for a variance, because they're changing what their existing footprint is right now. So if they change their existing footprint, then that needs to come to us. But what we're doing is people, and they found a builder that was doing garages for them, and it sounded like they were reasonable. This is not a high-income area of Troy, so a $500 fee to come do this that's a steep amount of money. So if we can give them some relief in that regards by just saying replacing the footprint, or if you go with a one, it has to conform to these standards. 3-foot setback, no more than this many square feet, blah, done, which are consistent with the area.
Yes, Ms.
In my
Chambers.
inspections in another city, we have some subdivisions that are built in the 50s, so they had a one-car garage, and it was 3 foot away from the fence. Well, new people, younger, 20 move in, the house is probably 90 or 80 years old now, so they don't want a one-car garage. They want a 2, and then they don't want it 10 foot away from the fence because it takes up their yard, and they would like it for recreation. So I find out that a 20-year-old and an 80-year-old who own housing, they have different values or requirements. And by feeding into this, like the mindset of what the ordinance can help out those.
Yeah.
Because we've had a lot of garages that, my God, they're 100 years of age, one car, and you go like this. And the house next door is $700,000 in cost, and we have some nice ones, and they have a 3-car garage. So but they have more land because you have to have a larger land space. I hope I'm not confusing you, but it's just little things that you pick up when you go and you talk to the resident, and they're, like this.
Okay. No, I appreciate this. So I guess I would suggest, for the sake of the evening, we've had a lot of discussion about some of the parameters. Would it be reasonable to come back to this in maybe 2 months?
A month?
A month, yeah, a month. That's June?
Well, I won't be here next month,
Okay.
Gotcha.
but
I won't be here, but we can definitely have somebody here. It's not an issue, but the application period for the June meeting is closed. Right now, we have no business for the June meeting.
2 months.
Yeah, July.
There you go.
unless you guys want to come here just to talk about this. Okay, so I guess my proposal would be calendar this for the July meeting. And if it seems reasonable for city staff, based on what we've talked about, if there's anything, kind of the guidelines, parameters to maybe have something in front of us to talk about. Does that sound reasonable, or are we still asking?
Well, I guess when we say guidelines and parameters, so I guess I'm not clear on that.
So I think we've identified the neighborhood,
Yep.
That's one.
and then we've identified the structure or structures, and we've talked about
Garage carports.
I guess the relief that we would grant, what we would encourage to be granted for those types of structures.
And I'm just trying to understand, okay. Just trying to regurgitate it so I have it accurately. So if there's an existing detached garage that doesn't meet the setback, we're moving towards allowing that to be reconstructed in the same footprint without a variance, right?
Yes.
That sounds
I
fair.
see a lot of nodding, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But if they change it,
Yeah. And I believe the intention is if they come back wanting a bigger garage, that would still be a variance because you know, they're going beyond the existing footprint.
And then with carports, the same thing?
Carports that if they went to, and that's what we have to look at, like what is the, what would it, I don't know what our zoning ordinance would be for how big a garage they could put on with that, with the size of that lot. So if I didn't have a garage here and I want to put a garage in, and how big of a garage can I put in?
So when you say carport, that's the one that's connected to the house?
Yep, just like a lean-to type of little plastic cover type thing.
Yeah, so,
They want to take that out and they decide they want to put a garage in the back now.
You could explore.
what do you want to do there?
That's what I'm saying, that what if we do,
So if they don't have a garage and they have a carport, you take the carport out.
right, now they want to put a garage.
Carport's not conforming?
What's that?
The carport's not conforming, or they just want to take it out
They want to take it out and put a garage in.
In the same
in the
footprint.
same spot?
No, they can't. They have to do the setbacks. So that's what I'm saying, that if they want to put a garage in, what's the size of an outbuilding or a garage that they can put on that lot? And then we give them the variance of the 3-foot setback from the property line, the relief from that setback.
That seems a little difficult
Yeah,
for me, just conceptually, to how that would be. I can understand replace the existing structure and not be
Right.
subject to the current zoning on setbacks. Taking out the carport and putting a new structure up, but we don't quite know where it would go.
That's why we're setting the parameters for it.
But I mean, like, even within because all those properties, obviously, they're slightly different. So I don't know where exactly we would tell them where they could put it without looking at each property. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I'm not, we're getting into the weeds literally on this, but that's where I'm like a little, yeah, Mr. Forster.
Why don't we, if you'll pardon me, Mr. McCauley, start with just the garage rebuild and see where we go from there. And then if we feel like we could add the carport aspect to it, that's something we can do later. But just for the simplicity of you being able to focus on what you need to do, I think I would just think about garage rebuilds and setbacks and keeping within the dimensions of the original footprint.
I agree.
And maybe
I
just
agree.
coming up with a bullet point
Yes.
list of facts, just to bring it all together?
Yeah.
Is that kind of the expectation here? Okay.
Because I would agree with that, because if they want to take the carport down and put a garage in, then they have to come to us for a variance, because that way we can look at it and approve it and make sure it conforms to the area. So I throw the carport part out, just the existing garage, replacing it, that they don't need a variance.
Okay.
I know, yeah.
Yep.
Sure. I know in some instances, city staff will prepare like example motions for different options. I think even just like a sample motion that says, we would like to formally request that the planning commission look at this because of this and this, like some kind of example where we can maybe insert the bullet points that we've been discussing when we actually craft a motion in July to pass along, may be helpful as well.
I think we could probably do something like that, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, Miss.
Sorry.
Okay, is that,
Yeah, so I think we can come up with a memo that kind of summarizes, gives the bullet points.
Thank you.
And then also include a sample motion. And in our internal discussions, if we have any other perhaps considerations that we think will be important at least to bring up to the zoning board of appeals, we can put that in there. Just as something, if you guys think it's important, we'd rather say it than not say it.
yes, absolutely.
And cause more questions later.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
All right, yeah, we can get a memo. Not a problem.
Okay, so we'll shoot for July,
Okay.
if that's reasonable
Fantastic.
to you.
I think
Is
we
that
can do
reasonable?
that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think we have to make a motion on that. I think we can just put that on the next, the July agenda.
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
You've given me clear direction. But
Okay.
I see Mr. Eisenbacher's
Yes.
raising his hand.
Well, on the exact same line but different subject, this memo I appreciate, and the reason that this item had come before us is because it didn't meet the minimum square feet per apartment. And I would like to see a similar resolution for the planning commission where either we, let me see what I had jotted down, where we reduce the minimum area requirement for apartments and replace it with a lower minimum or an average square feet for the development. Like this particular development had many of them that were larger than the minimum, but many of them were smaller than the minimum. And the average was somewhere near the minimum, but you couldn't have any below the minimums. That's why they had to be in front of us. So that doesn't allow for a diversity of apartments for low-income people and for transition people who are growing a family or whatever. And this is obviously a good example of a creative redevelopment that we should encourage.
So maybe we can do that second. Maybe we'll tackle the
Two of them.
garage. What's that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Get it on the list.
that's a good example, though. Okay. Anything else on 7A, the first item? I think we've done that. Thank you, Mr. McCauley, for raising that and for the good discussion. Okay, the second item under miscellaneous business is now our elections for chair and vice chair. We have to do this every May according to our bylaws and our articles of organization, if I'm saying that correctly. So we need to elect a new chair and vice chair for the next 12 months. Mr. Fox.
Mr. Bostonbrook, how do you enjoy your position as chair? Would you say that you're a fan of being in the position that you are in currently?
Because we are.
Could you see yourself doing it for another 12 months, hypothetically?
Hypothetically, I could. It's a very easy group, but yeah. Unless someone else is really chomping at the bit to
I'm not allowed to.
steal the gavel.
I'm not allowed to.
No.
Like to make a motion to nominate Mr. Bostonbrook
I
as
second it.
chair.
Okay, I guess we'll do this one by one. We'll do chair first and then we'll do vice chair. So does that make sense? Okay, so we have a motion for Mr. Fox, and I appreciate the sentiment, and seconded by Mr. Forster to elect me to be the chair for the next term, next 12 months, calendar year, not calendar year. Unless there's any discussion, I guess we can move to a vote.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Forster?
Yes.
Mr. Bostonbrook?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Mr. Kenkre?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yes.
All right, motion has been approved. Thank you for the vote of confidence. And how about, okay, let's move on to vice chair. Mr. Desmond is not here tonight, but I don't know if that's
That's a perfect reason to
good or bad for
nominate
him.
Yeah.
Actually, when he informed me that he wasn't going to be here, I reminded him that we had elections and that if he wanted to continue on as the vice chair, if he would just let me or the chair know so we could make that known. He didn't respond.
Okay, so we don't have a sense from Mr. Desmond, but whether he would like to continue to serve as vice chair, so we can have discussion, or someone can bring a motion if there wants to reappoint Mr. Desmond, or someone else wants to be nominated.
I would say
Mr.
that we appoint him because he didn't respond, but he didn't say that he didn't want it either.
There you go. Right. We just don't know. Right.
Right.
My question is, can we vote to have him continue? If he comes back and says no, we just do,
Start it over.
I don't see why we couldn't.
okay. All right.
Yeah, Mr. McCauley.
I make the motion to nominate Mr. Desmond as vice chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the next term.
I second it.
All right, seconded by Ms. Chambers. All right, let's vote. Mr. Evans?
Mr. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Kenkre?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Mr. Bostonbrook?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Mr. Forster?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Desmond is going to continue to serve as our vice chair. I guess we'll find out in July. I'm sure he'll be pleased.
Yeah.
He does a
and
good job.
I
Yeah,
also
sure.
realized that both of you got gypped out of your year because we didn't meet so many times. So this allows you to get a full year in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we worked, we're too good at our jobs.
Can we change that language to 12 minimum meetings?
Do that.
I'm joking.
Then we have to keep track.
Somebody's pulling our leg over there.
I think things are good the way they are.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for voting on that and appreciate it.
No public.
Any public comments?
No public here.
No public here to comment. Okay, we will then adjourn to our next meeting in July, right, Mr. Evans?
Yeah, there will be July, yes.
Okay. We are adjourned.